Hello, everyone. Welcome to Online Seller UK podcast. My name is Prabhat, founder at Online Seller UK, and we've been doing the series of podcasts for the last 1 year. We've got now 50 over podcasts. So if you haven't seen our YouTube channel, go into Online Seller UK and find our lots of Amazon related podcasts there. Today, I've got Brent, founder at Amazon Pathfinder with us. And Amazon Pathfinder is an Amazon advertising agency. And we'll be talking about Amazon advertising budgets today. So welcome to our podcast, Brent.
Hey there. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Excellent. So, Brent, I think it may be best if you introduce yourself and what are the interesting things you're doing lately.
Yeah, sure. So like you said, I run AMZ Pathfinder. We've been around for 6 years now, actually, a pretty long time in the scope of things at Amazon. And we're an advertising agency first and foremost. We also do storefront design, basic translation stuff, audits, work with a couple aggregators here and there, kind of a mix, but primarily advertising, which is my personal passion. I worked in Google before I started this company, doing Google ads and stuff like that for an agency. And so kind of transitioned the skill set over, and it's been my life for like 10 years now. So yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So we've chosen really, in fact, you've chosen really practical topic and something that everybody needs to think about. So that's Amazon advertising budget. So initially, how do you set the budget for campaign or for the account?
Yeah, sure. And I think this topic is super interesting this time of year too, because we're about to come up on a time period where your spend can be under extreme fluctuation. Obviously Black Friday, Cyber Monday, aka Turkey 5, is one of those periods. So the way I conceptualize budget, the way I try to explain it to my team at least, is you have to set it from the top down, but you have to optimize it from the bottom up. So what does that mean? Businesses have quarterly objectives, they have monthly objectives, and then they usually allocate, okay, how much money can we spend on Amazon ads, or how much money can we spend on Google ads or Facebook or whatever other channels that exist. And so you can set your budget from that level and then filter it down. Well, how much do we want to spend per product line or per product family? And on what tactics do we want to spend? Sponsored products, sponsored brands, and the new display advertising, which is increasingly popular. So that's how I see it having to be set, so you have to start like that. But then when you actually allocate it, I'm thinking of it kind of like a, inverted triangle. And then here, this end is like a pyramid, so you have to actually allocate it from the bottom up. So it's like what actually spends on advertising. It's the targets, that is to say ASINs or keywords or categories, whatever. So you have to optimize your bids at that level because that dictates everything else. So you have to work from the bottom up, and then you can look at your campaigns, then you can look at your portfolios, then you can look at your account daily spend, monthly spend, quarterly spend even. So that's the way I encourage everyone to like mentally tackle allocation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, excellent. So when you start, if you put a certain amount of budget on say, for example, a particular campaign, do you revisit weekly, fortnightly, a monthly? So what sort of process do you normally follow?
That's a good question. Yeah, this is unfortunately usually the answer with PPC, but like it depends. And what it depends on is the spend, what I call like spend velocity. So if you're spending $10, £10 a day, that's like, not a terribly large amount of money, and you're not going to be gathering a lot of information very quickly with that campaign. However, we have clients that spend thousands and thousands a day. So for them, just a couple days, that's a tremendous amount of data and a tremendous amount of spend flowing through the account. And for them, we can recalibrate budgets sometimes multiple times a week, or at least bi-weekly, checking in with some kind of basic reporting at the product level to say, okay, we're spending a little bit too much here. We're spending a little bit, not enough here. We need to tweak this, tweak that to make sure it's in balance. Another thing I would encourage people to think about is how they're allocating spend at the campaign type level. So, sponsored products, everybody knows that. That's like the keyword-based one, ASIN-based. But then you have sponsored brands and sponsored display. And like, typically those should make up, a chunk of the spend too. They should take up a notable, but not majority percentage of spend as well. There's some like rough guidelines for that, which I could get into if you think that's relevant for the audience. But I think that's another way to think about it, is to always be breaking down these by ad type, because each one of those campaign ad types has different exposure in different parts of the Amazon ecosystem.
Yeah, I think I think it's good to touch base on that really because, as you said, sponsor products, sponsor brands, sponsor display there,
Hmm.
um, and when a particular account goes in and it may have a sponsor products ads only, then you may introduce other types of ads. So then, how do you distribute that budget amongst all the three types? So do you want to talk a little bit on that, please?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the first thing is you have to have brand registry. So that's kind of like a prerequisite for most things on Amazon these days,
Yeah, yeah,
because you're not going to get access to sponsored brands unless you have that. And I think sponsored display, even for that matter. So you have to have that. But when it comes to allocation, we see anywhere from 75 to 85% of spend going to sponsored products, like the classic main type of advertising most people
yeah,
think of when they talk about PPC. And then let's say sponsored brands could be anywhere from, I would say maybe 15 to 20% at most in an account. And then display, depending on what kind of success you've had with it, because we're still testing a lot of the newer display targeting types for clients. It could be as much as 10%, but usually it's like around somewhere like 5, 6, 7%. This time of year, I think retargeting is going to be really big. Amazon's rolled out a lot of new audience stuff, so that could be pretty big. But those are very rough percentages. In general, if your account is like 95% sponsored products, that's usually something that we would catch like in an audit and say to that company or seller, yeah, you're probably over reliant on sponsored products. We see that all the time. It's a super, super
yeah,
common problem, along with companies bidding on a very, very small number of keywords. They might have like 5 or 10 keywords that are spending like 60% of their budget. So that kind of concentration with few keywords and just one ad type is really common. We see that in audits literally every week. We see that same
yeah.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So one good question on the budget. So if there was a certain budget set,
Mhm.
so is it a set as that, or do you normally or sometimes go beyond the set budget?
That brings up another layer to this. So one
Yeah.
thing to understand is that Amazon is always trying to hit that budget as an average over the course of the month. And if
Yeah.
you read the documentation with a well, not even really a fine tooth comb, they put it pretty prominently recently up on this Seller Central. But they will spend up to 25% more than the budget that you have allocated for that day. I mean, we in practice don't see that happening very often, but it is possible. It is a thing that can happen. Um, and another way that you can basically spend more in an account is using some of the new budget rules that Amazon's rolled out, or using software. We use a tool called IntentWise, which we absolutely love, and that has some automations built into it where you can, let's say, look at recent performance window or set a time frame, and it will increase your campaign level budget based on these rules. So it's possible to shift it during the day. You can also do that stuff manually, but I recommend that everyone try to use automation and software as much as they possibly can
Yeah.
for obvious reasons. The more campaigns you have, the more that becomes a liability and a giant pain in the butt. So
Yeah, absolutely. So this feature you're talking about in terms of budgets within the Amazon platform itself,
mhm.
um, not externally. So have you found any effectiveness on those within Amazon at all?
Yeah, we're using this in a very limited capacity right now.
Mhm.
It is in beta. I mean, and
Yeah.
in fact, I did a podcast with someone the other day about this, but basically, even in US accounts where we expect to see a lot of things initially, it's not showing up in like every account. So
Right.
just a word out there for everyone. If you're, obviously your audience is very UK heavy, I'm sure, but like
Yeah.
they may or may not see it. Many of them may sell in the US, in which case they probably heard of it or have seen it. But the use of that tool that I kind of determined is the best is by performance. So you can set performance based thresholds, and what the rule does, it's a bit complicated, but it checks it every day, and then it makes a decision, based on the time that it checks it, if it needs to increase the budget or not. And to be clear, it is an increase. There is no decrease feature because of course Amazon wants to give you a really fast sports car, but there's no brake. It's only a gas pedal. So that's one thing to understand. But essentially, you can increase it if the ACoS is like sub 25%. And what it does is it looks at the last 7 days of data. And so it'll increase it by whatever percentage you set. Let's say 25%. It just, increases that. Another way to do it is by conversion rate. There are other options like click-through rate, but I don't really understand why you'd use that as an example. But we do have that rolled out in a limited capacity. We also use IntentWise, that tool, like I mentioned before, to do this stuff. And we've been doing that for months. That's not anything new. It's just that now some of these features are like officially supported by Amazon, whereas before with that tool, they weren't, but it still works. You know, there's always a gray line there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, look, you've given us really good insight on budgets on Amazon. So, really to the point information. That's really good. So, listeners will, I'm sure they will take it, learn a lot from this. So, if somebody is to find you, Brent, where's the best place to find?
Yeah, they can reach out on Facebook. You can find me, Brent Zaradnik, on there. Same thing on LinkedIn. You can also email hello@amzpathfinder.com. That goes to me. Very accessible, very easy to reach.
Excellent. So thank you very much for your time, Brent, and all the best. All the best.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.